Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we're going to be diving into 4 different realms, and each of those share different disciplines, like strength, intelligence, agility, and wisdom. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the classic moves of chess, but on top of that we're going to layer some interesting card play of not only the cards that are moving, but also in ability cards. Today we're taking a look at Eternal Kings. This is for 2 players. It is a chess type game with a lot of different things built into it. So it's on Kickstarter right now. I'm going to give you an overview of the game and how it's played, and then I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so any art and components you see are not final, and you'll want to check the Kickstarter page to see all of the final work. Now, the game is based on chess, but what makes it unique are the cards that are in the game. Here we're looking at 4 different decks. Now, there's 4 realms in the game, and each of these realms is basically tied to one of the 4 disciplines. And so if we start at the top left, this sort of brown deck here is basically the discipline of strength, and they specialize in initiative and position. Down here we have the agility, and they specialize in tempo and space. Here we have wisdom, and they specialize in safety and coordination. And here we have intelligence, and they specialize in versatility and development. Now when you're first learning the game, you'll take one of these pre-made decks, but as you get to know the game, you'll be able to build your own decks, which we'll go over later. And once each player has their deck ready, they'll set their cards up in the proper places on the board. In this case, it's a play mat, but again, check the Kickstarter project to see what the final board or mat might look like. Now, if you notice, each of the cards have a chess type piece in the artwork, and that's because that's pretty much where they go. Again, this is very much based on chess, so here are the pawns, and each of the different decks are going to have different names and different abilities depending on these pawns. And here we have something that moves like the rook and the knight and the bishop, and so you're going to set the game up as if you were playing chess with those cards. And here you can see the king and queen, and also each deck has one pawn that's actually different from the rest. So far I've been showing you the creature cards, which are the main pieces in the game that you'll be moving around as cards. But there's also a deck called the ability deck. Now this will be face down throughout the game, but to show you what one of these cards looks like, this is pickpocket, and if you're able to spend, we'll show you how these work later, but you could target an adjacent enemy's creature, and that person would discard a card, and then you would be able to draw a card. Because you don't start with any of these, you actually have to work to get them in your hand, and they're a big part of the strategy in the game. Now the game plays very much like chess, where you're going to take a move, then the other player's going to take a move, and you'll keep going back and forth, but there are different things that can happen. So for example, on this turn we want to move this pawn, and just like chess, you can move it 1 straight, or if it's the first move, it can move up to 2. But let's say we just move it 1. Now each of these creatures has a certain amount of discipline. They also have attack values and life. In this case, it has 4 discipline. Now, this creature also has an ability that it can trigger, and it needs 4 discipline in order to do that. It does have 4 discipline, so you could flip this over, that's what that means, and draw a card. So when you flip this over, it's almost sort of like exhaustion, where it cannot use that, it has no discipline left to use, but you're able to draw a card from that abilities deck that I showed you. Now some of the abilities will be red cast, and these can be used out of turn, and they can also be used, pretty much when you want, depending on what the card says. In this case, you could play this and then get 4 discipline of that type until the end of the turn. When you do play these, they go into a discard pile. Now each creature can only be flipped once per turn, and when it's flipped like this, you would need to activate it again on a different turn, and these are called tactical abilities because they're white. And so what would happen is, on a future turn, you could spend 0 to basically just flip this back over, and now you have this again. You sort of refreshed yourself, but you're only doing that if you're able to move that specific creature. But let's say it looked like this. When you move, you can also target another creature, and as you know in chess, the pawns can attack diagonally. So if we wanted to attack this Earth Apprentice, we could come in basically right into the spot where this is, and then we would look at the attack value and the defense value and see if there's any modifiers, see if they might have a red cast they might want to play, and things like that to see who wins. If this player can give as much damage or more as the life, then this player would be eliminated and discarded out of the game. If this player did some things with some cards that made it so that this player could not eliminate this player, this one would just go back to where it started. And some of these creatures have some really cool abilities, like this one moves like a rook, and if they spend 2 of the discipline, they can shadow 1, which means it can move through an allied creature. So normally you wouldn't be able to move through this because there's a creature there, but this would allow you to shadow and move through an allied creature. Now this was the castle crawler I was just talking about. It's in the bottom left-hand corner. We see the board sort of set up in mid-game play, and it's going to want to activate its ability and shadow through this one ally creature here to act like a rook and go and attack that creature. So before it moves, it can flip this over, spend the 2 discipline to shadow through the allied creature, and then come into here and try to attack this Earth Apprentice. And this castle crawler has 6 of attack, and this only has 5 of defense. Let's say this player could not do anything to stop it. Well, then this player's Earth Apprentice would then be eliminated and discarded out of the game. Now let's show you an example using ability card. Let's say this queen is going to move diagonally all the way to here. Now when it moves, it can then play an ability card if it can spend the discipline for it. Now at first it looks like this is in danger because the other player's bishop could come over and attack the queen. But remember, the queen still has discipline to spend. They have up to 4. Now I'm just going to show you what this card looks like. This Pyro Trap only needs a 3 of this discipline to spend. This queen has 4. So they've spent this, and what they actually can do is put this down face down. You wouldn't be able to see it yet, right in this spot. So now on the next turn, if the opponent then tries to come through, it can attack the queen, but it first has to deal with what's here. So if it comes to try to attack the queen, you flip this over, and then it sees that it's a Pyro Trap, and essentially this gets 6 damage. It only has 3 life, and that bishop would have been discarded and killed out of the game. So now I have the board set up with a different realm. Here we're using the Realm of Strength, and I'm going to show you how you can combo together different moves to take out more than one opponent in one turn. We're going to focus in this area right about here. So let's say it's our turn, and we could see this Brain Extender moves like a knight, and it could come over here and kill the Earth Apprentice, assuming it doesn't do something to stop it. But let's look at the ability here. We could spend 4 of the discipline to be able to target an adjacent ally and can move it if it hasn't already moved this turn. Well, adjacent in this game is all the way around you. This is an adjacent ally. So we can spend the 4 to flip this. We've done that ability. We'll finish off this movement, which will move like a knight. Let's just assume that it has, let's see, we have 5 attack, 5 defense. Let's say it can't do anything. This one is discarded out. And this was the adjacent ally that we wanted to move again on this turn because it hadn't yet moved. And now we can move this pawn over here. 5 attack, 5 defense. Let's say it couldn't play any cards or any type of thing to stop it. And then this one is discarded, and you've taken out 2 opponents in 1 turn. Now we're going to show you an example of using a different deck in the realm of wisdom, and we're going to be focusing on this area here, so let's zoom in. Now let's say it's our opponent's turn, and they're going to move their pawn to try to attack and defeat my pawn here. And so this pawn moves in, and we see that it has 5 attack, 5 defense. Normally this my creature would be defeated and taken off the board. However, we see this, our War Priest has a red ability. It's a fast ability. It can do it immediately, and it costs 4. It has 4. It can prevent the next 2 damage done to a target creature around it within this turn. So this one would flip, which gives this a defense of 2, essentially 2 more. So this now has this will only do 3 damage as opposed to 5. So it doesn't actually defeat it. So this pawn now has to go back to its original spot. And now it's our turn. Let's say we move our queen diagonal, which is a legal move. Now look at this ability. This one says if we spend our 4 discipline, we can flip a target adjacent creature's card. So we can flip this one to now flip this one back. And so now if this pawn tries to attack here again, it can still be defended again by flipping over the War Priest, as we just showed. So an interesting combo there. And so the opponents will take turns back and forth until one of the kings has been defeated. And of course, the one that defeats that king is the winner. Well, I hope this overview helped you get a very good sense of how the game plays and the replayability of it. And if you've ever liked chess, then this obviously is going to add that layer on top of it to the next level. I'm not a huge chess player, and I've actually played some of the sort of chess variants that is similar to chess but is different. This one is very unique in the way that it almost feels like a sort of Magic the Gathering-esque style game placed on top of a game of chess. And it's not just about chess, and those cards that you get, the ability cards, the other player can't see those, right? So they don't know exactly what you're doing. So it adds that layer of, well, you know what, you might be better than me at chess straight up, but based upon my strategy, based upon the deck that I've built, based upon the cards in my hand that you don't know I have, I could be pulling some tactics to actually take you out, which is pretty cool. Now, if you're looking to learn more about this or even to back it, I've placed a link directly below me in the description of this video, and that will bring you right to the project page where I'm sure they'd love your support.